To avoid being discovered by the Nazis, Audrey Hepburn had to change her name. Her mother went to activities that supported Hitler. She raised money for the resistance by performing ballet in secret behind blackout curtains. Possessed prior experience working diligently. Ballet is challenging, it requires discipline. The things I could do were them. These missing images of Audrey Hepburn show a woman who Hollywood wished to hide. A war survivor who spent her entire career carrying agonizing secrets, dancing while famished, and running the daily risk of being executed. Discovered in dusty basements after several decades. These pictures depict the tale that studios concealed in order to preserve her flawless appearance. In Ixelles, Belgium, Audrey Hepburn was born on May 4, 1929. Her ancestors were wealthy and aristocratic. A Dutch baroness was Ella van Heemstra, her mother. Her father, Joseph Rustin, was an Austrian-born British industrialist. Even though they were privileged, she had a difficult childhood. She was only 6 years old when her father abruptly left the family in 1935. She was broken by the loss. Audrey felt something wasn't right, even though her mother told her he had gone on a trip and might not come back. Through the walls, she could hear her mother sobbing at night. Years later, she would describe his desertion as the most devastating experience of her life. She was always wondering why he had departed. She finally located him in 1964, after years of looking for him. She was among the world's most well-known actresses at that time. However, he exhibited little interest in her accomplishments or life when they first met. The chilly reunion brought up old scars. Rather than allowing the anguish to shatter her, she transformed it into something positive. She grew incredibly sympathetic. Constantly aware of the sensation of loneliness. The world was becoming more hazardous as Audrey battled her father's absence. War threatened to break out in Europe. Like many other nobles of the day, her mother had backed Nazi ideologies. She even went to events that were pro-Hitler. However, she had a change of heart when the actual savagery of the Nazis was exposed. In May 1940, she joined the Dutch resistance to Germany's invasion of the Netherlands. She even renamed Audrey Etta van Heemstra in order to conceal her British ancestry from the Nazis. In the hopes of protection from the Netherlands' neutrality, Audrey and her family relocated to Arnhem. That didn't happen. Living under Nazi rule was intolerable. Food got hard to come by. By the Hunger Winter, which lasted from 1944 to 1945, famine was widespread. Audrey survived by drinking nettle tea and eating tulip bulbs. Her body weight decreased to a mere 88 pounds. In addition to having anemia, she had chronic respiratory issues. She subsequently remembers going days without eating or looking for turnips in freezing fields. Although the conflict severely damaged her physically, it also strengthened her fortitude. Despite starvation, she managed to fight back. Since she was a little child, she had been trained in ballet, and she utilized dance to help the resistance generate money throughout the war. Blackout curtains were used to conceal her performance. There was never any cheering. Any sound could summon German troops to their residence. The funds were used to support Jews who were hiding and resistance fighters. She was also a courier who used her shoes to conceal secret messages that allowed her to evade Nazi patrols. The danger was known to her. If she was discovered, she would be put to death. She nevertheless did it. At the age of 16, Audrey continued to pursue her passion of becoming a ballerina after the war ended in 1945. However, her body was weakened by years of hunger. She was warned by doctors that she would never be strong enough to do ballet professionally. Additionally, she was deemed too tall for many typical parts at 5 feet 7 inches. She had escaped famine and conflict just to have her ambitions dashed. She persisted though. She decided to pursue acting, a decision that would forever alter her life. She debuted in a Dutch film, 7 Lessons, in 1948, at the age of 18. A project that began as a brief documentary on the Netherlands in the English language. For Dutch viewers, it later developed into a full-length movie. Although Hepburn's role as a KLM hostess was brief, it provided her a taste of acting. Although it wasn't much, she received 50 guilders for her work, which was her first acting salary. Several Dutch cities, including Amsterdam, Hilversum, Edam, and Rotterdam, were used for the film's production. It intercut a light tale with aerial views of the nation. Despite receiving little attention, the movie marked a sea change for Hepburn. Her goal was to become a prima ballerina, so she trained in ballet for years, but she had to modify her course due to health concerns. Acting was her new career. Charles van der Linden, who directed the movie, later asserted that he found her years before Hollywood made her famous. In order to support herself and her mother after relocating to London, Hepburn worked as a chorus girl in West End musicals. After appearing in high-button shoes at the London Hippodrome in 1948, she went on to the Cambridge Theatre for Sauce Tartare in 1949 and Sauce Picante in 1950. There was a lot of dancing and singing included in these fast-paced musical comedy. Despite being hard, the task helped her gain confidence and stage experience. She also worked with actor Felix Aylmer to hone her voice during this period. The elegance and elegant diction that later became a hallmark of her style were shaped in part by his lessons. Funds were limited. To make ends meet, her mom took on menial jobs. However, Hepburn was adamant about succeeding. People began to notice her grace and charm, despite the fact that she was still not earning big roles. The years she spent in London prepared her for the next step. Hepburn's life altered in 1951 when she had an unexpected encounter while filming Monte Carlo Baby. Colette, a French novelist, was looking for a starring actor for her Broadway version of her novella Gigi. Her first thought upon seeing Hepburn on sight was, "There's Gigi." Hepburn was apprehensive about accepting such a significant part. She reportedly said to Colette, "I can't act." However, both the producers and Colette had faith in her. Hepburn departed for New York in October 1951 after being urged to seize the chance. Throughout the entire 18-day voyage across the Atlantic, she committed her words to memory. Early reviews were positive despite the hard rehearsals. Hepburn was dubbed the year's best actor by critics when Gigi debuted in Philadelphia. November 24, 1951, marked the show's formal Broadway debut at the Fulton Theater. She was adored by audiences, and the production ran until May 31, 1952, for 219 performances. A week after its premiere, Hepburn's name was shown above the title, a distinction that is rarely bestowed upon a novice. She was not only a Broadway star because of this role. It led her to become one of the most adored actors of all time and opened doors to Hollywood. Director William Wyler wanted an actress with a lot of recognition when Roman Holiday was put into production in 1952. He contemplated Elizabeth Taylor and Gene Simmons, but then he watched Hepburn's screen test. She had a unique blend of honesty and grace that seemed entirely genuine. In order to free her from a contract with Gigi, Paramount Pictures paid $50,000 because they had such faith in her. Everything changed after that choice. The summer of 1952 saw the filming in Rome. Hepburn gave the role of Princess Anne. Young royal weary of her rigorous responsibilities. Seeking a taste of independence, she slips out one night and explores the city. Joe Bradley, portrayed by Gregory Peck, is an American journalist who discovers her dozing off on a park seat. As they spend the day together, he decides against writing the exclusive piece he had originally planned about her covert escape. The chemistry between them was effortless. From dancing by the Tiber River to riding a Vespa through the streets, every scenario seemed authentic. August 27, 1953, was the movie's U.S. premiere date. Viewers were enthralled. Hepburn gave a vibrant and new performance. She was relatable and sophisticated at the same time. A princess who dared to laugh, explore, and occasionally defy the rules. She was commended by the New York Times for her poise, grace, and positive attitude. The yearning for independence of her character resonated with post-war audiences. Her attire, particularly the basic shirt and skirt she wore while touring Rome, served as an inspiration for fashion designers. Roman Holiday received 3 Oscars and 10 nominations at the 26th Academy Awards in 1954. Hepburn's win for Best Actress was an uncommon accomplishment for a newbie. In addition to winning Best Story and Best Costume Design, the movie redefined romance in Hollywood and became a timeless masterpiece that was a love letter to Rome. The events that transpired would not have been the same without Gregory Peck. His deal gave him top billing, and he was the lone star in the movie when he signed on. However, he came to the realization that Hepburn was unique midway through the movie. "You need to change this because she's going to be a big star," he informed his agency. Considering that male leads still dominated Hollywood, this was a novel step. Peck, however, requested that Hepburn's name be listed next to his. In addition, he became her mentor, helping her navigate her first big Hollywood production. For decades, they remained friends. There were many memorable performances throughout Audrey Hepburn's career. Her most well-known roles, however, were not without difficulties, controversy, and surprising twists behind the glitz. She portrayed a chauffeur's daughter who was entangled in a romantic triangle with 2 affluent brothers in the 1954 film Sabrina. Although the Billy Wilder-directed movie was a triumph, the journey there wasn't without its challenges. Cary Grant declined to play Linus Larrabee, therefore Humphrey Bogart was chosen. Bogart and Hepburn had an uneasy connection because Bogart was 30 years older than Hepburn, at 54. The movie didn't make him pleased either. Wilder frequently made last-minute scene changes, which irritated him so badly that he later likened the situation to Casablanca, 1942. The situation became much more complex due to off-screen turmoil. Hepburn fell in love with her co-star William Holden while they were filming, but their romance ended when she found out he was unable to conceive. Regardless of how much they loved one another, Hepburn left because she had always wanted a family. Holden never recovered. She was eventually dubbed the love of my life by him. Additionally, his already strained relationship with Bogart was made worse by their romance. Ever since they worked together on Invisible Stripes in 1939, the two performers had not been fond of one another. Furthermore, their animosity on the Sabrina set escalated into heated arguments that occasionally called for staff members to step in. Nevertheless, Sabrina grew popular. It won one Academy Award for Best Costume Design and received 6 nominations. In addition, the movie launched Hepburn's long-term partnership with French fashion designer Hubert de Givenchy, whose exquisite gowns made her a style icon. Hepburn was already a major figure in Hollywood by 1961, but Breakfast at Tiffany's elevated her notoriety to a new level. She portrayed Holly Golightly, a peculiar socialite who was attempting to establish herself in New York City. The novella by Truman Capote served as the inspiration for the iconic movie. However, Hepburn was not the initial pick for the part. Although Capote had intended for Holly to feature Marilyn Monroe, Paramount Pictures decided to go with Hepburn in order to increase the film's box office appeal. She was initially unsure about portraying Holly. She typically played elegant women, but this character was erratic and ethically complex. She accepted the challenge, though, and claimed Holly as her own. One of the most iconic pictures in movie history is Hepburn standing outside Tiffany & Company wearing a black Givenchy dress, pearls, and huge sunglasses in the film's opening sequence. Simple yet exquisite, the outfit revolutionized fashion and made the little black dress a wardrobe staple for women everywhere. Breakfast at Tiffany's became a landmark movie of the time, and Hepburn's performance earned her a nomination for an Academy Award. However, the film did not age well in every way. The most significant dispute arose from Mickey Rooney's portrayal of Mr. Yunyoshi, a stereotypical figure that some critics subsequently deemed offensive. The movie was still a masterpiece, though, and Hepburn's charisma helped it stand out. 3 years later, one of the largest casting disputes in Hollywood history was caused by My Fair Lady, 1964. Julie Andrews played the part of Eliza Doolittle on Broadway, who was a Cockney flower girl who was turned into a lady of high society. Warner Brothers, however, decided to use Hepburn in their film adaptation of the musical. Backlash resulted from studio bosses' belief that she had more star power. In 1964, Andrews won an Oscar for Mary Poppins, which many interpreted as a reaction to her being overlooked. Hepburn encountered additional difficulties when discovering that the majority of her vocals would be dubbed. She thought her voice would be used because she had trained for the part, but producers changed her mind without notifying her until the very last of the shoot. The news broke her heart. If she had known, she subsequently said, she would not have accepted the role. Though controversial, My Fair Lady was a huge hit. Among its 8 Academy Award wins was Best Picture. Most people praised Rex Harrison for his portrayal of Professor Henry Higgins, however there were differing views on Hepburn's performance. She was miscast, according to some commentators, but others praised her for capturing Eliza's change. A significant part of the movie's legacy was its clothes. With more than 1,500 pieces created by Cecil Beaton, Hepburn's pearl white gown from the Embassy Ball stands out as one of the most iconic gowns in movie history. However, beneath all the glitz, My Fair Lady rekindled a long-running discussion over Hollywood's preference for big stars over artistic integrity, a topic that is still being discussed today. Heartbreak plagued Audrey Hepburn's personal life, despite her being one of the most admired women in the world. She met Mel Ferrer, a filmmaker and actor, during a party in 1953. They were introduced by Gregory Peck, and they soon collaborated on the Broadway production of Undine. Hepburn respected Ferrer's knowledge and expertise. He was 12 years older, had 4 kids, and had already been married twice. Nevertheless, she fell in love. They were married in Switzerland on September 25, 1954, in a little ceremony. Their lives together appeared to be ideal at first. Hepburn's career was aided by Ferrer, who had recently won an Academy Award for Roman Holiday. In private, however, things were different. He was said to be domineering and envious. Ferrer ruled her with an iron fist, according to director Alfred Lunt. The friction between them increased as Hepburn's notoriety increased. Tragic events kept happening to her, despite her desire to start a family. She miscarried many times, notably in 1959 following an accident while riding a horse while filming The Unforgiven. She gave birth to Sean, their son, in 1960. However, she lost 2 more pregnancies after that. She endured years of marriage despite the suffering in Ferrer's alleged adultery. She did not wish for her son to grow up in a dysfunctional household. After 14 years together, however, she was unable to maintain the relationship by 1968. The couple divorced. She had previously encountered another type of love long before that. She and William Holden had an affair in 1954 while they were filming Sabrina. Despite being married and having 3 kids, she was swayed by his attractiveness and charm. She once referred to him as the most attractive man she had ever seen. Off-screen, their chemistry was equally powerful, and she even contemplated leaving Ferrer for him. After that, everything was different. It was revealed that Holden had had a vasectomy. Being a mother was Hepburn's lifelong ambition. She ended the affair after she came to the realization that they had no future together. They collaborated on Paris When It Sizzles once more in 1962, 8 years later. Holden's drunkenness had gotten worse by then, though. Their once passionate romance was reduced to a memory as Hepburn endured the agonizing experience. The end of a love story that had never really materialized was marked by Holden's death in 1981. In 1968, she met Italian physician Andrea Ditti on a cruise after her divorce. He was affable, smart, and gave her the impression that she had at last discovered the security she had been seeking. On January 18, 1969, they were married, and she gave birth to their son, Luca, in 1970. Their joy, however, was fleeting. For the duration of their marriage, Dotti was unfaithful. His presence with younger ladies was occasionally even observed in public. He also hosted them at their house when Hepburn was abroad. It was a terrible betrayal. Sean was 12 years old when she told him about Dotti's affairs. In 1974, she experienced yet another miscarriage, adding to the emotional suffering. Dotti desired that she adopt the role of a conventional Italian wife while he carried on with his social life as he saw fit. The disparity between them increased. They got divorced in 1982 after marrying for 13 years. Then something occurred. Hepburn first met Dutch actor Robert Wolders at a dinner gathering in 1980. They clicked right together, and he had just lost his wife. In contrast to her previous relationships, there was no hardship or heartache. They established a life together based on friendship and trust even though they were never married. They lived in harmony and tranquility together for more than 10 years. As Hepburn committed herself to humanitarian activity, Wolders frequently accompanied her on her UNICEF excursions. In an interview from 1989, she described him as a great man who gave her a sense of security and profound love. She had been looking for a love free from suffering for years. After all, she eventually located it. Wolders wrote a few succinct yet impactful comments reflecting on their time together after her death in 1993. We should cherish one another more than anything else in life. The course of Audrey Hepburn's life drastically changed. Following Wait Until Dark, 1967. The film, a gripping psychological thriller, was a critical and financial triumph and garnered her a nomination for an Academy Award. However, Hepburn took a surprising turn of events rather than leveraging that momentum. She left the Hollywood world. Even though she was at the pinnacle of her career, something else was more important. She desired to have children. She had recently welcomed her son, Sean, into the world and was married to actor Mel Ferrer at the time. She then wedded Andrea Ditti, an Italian psychotherapist, and had Luca, another son. Hepburn found it easy to make this decision. She previously stated that having children of her own was the one thing she had ever dreamed of in her life. It was more than simply family, though. Hollywood has become unappealing. She was exhausted by lengthy filming and ongoing scrutiny. She desired a more subdued, purposeful experience. In the 1970s and 1980s, she did occasionally play parts, such as Robin and Marian in 1976, and in 1981, they all chuckled. These were the exceptions, though. She had practically retired from acting by the late 1980s. This withdrawal from Hollywood also created the situation for what would turn out to be the most significant role in her life. In the capacity of a humanitarian, not an actress. In the Netherlands, Hepburn had experienced Nazi occupation during World War II. She had experienced famine and seen unspeakable pain, but she also understood the importance of help. UNICEF's predecessor, the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, had provided her with food and medical assistance. She could never forget that encounter. She would do the same for decades to come. Hepburn was appointed a UNICEF Goodwill Ambassador in 1988. The greatest role of my life, as she put it. She traveled to Ethiopia on her first trip during a catastrophic famine. She went to see 500 malnourished youngsters in an orphanage there. She didn't just watch, she did something about it. To ensure that the world couldn't ignore what was happening, she did up to 15 interviews every day for several weeks. Millions in aid were mobilized thanks to her efforts. Over the following 5 years, she was constantly on the road. Working on Operation Lifeline, which brought food to places cut off by fighting, she traveled to Sudan during its civil war. She backed Indianization initiatives in Bangladesh. She promoted sanitation and clean water in Vietnam. In 1992, she traveled to Somalia for her last trip. It upset her to see what she did. "I entered a nightmare," she claimed. "This was not what I expected." She had never seen such a humanitarian calamity as the one brought about by the war and starvation. The field was not the end of her work. She provided testimony to the U.S. Congress created fundraising drives and used UNICEF's State of the World's Children reports to increase awareness. She kept fighting for underprivileged kids even after receiving a cancer diagnosis in 1992. She worked till her body could no longer support her. The way that the world views humanitarian situations has been altered by Hepburn's efforts. She was able to draw attention to herself. When she traveled to Bangladesh, she demonstrated that the nation was not, as Henry Kissinger originally claimed, a hopeless situation. She made the impact of UNICEF's efforts visible to the world. Her death had no effect on her influence. UNICEF's work is still supported by the Audrey Hepburn Society, which was established by her family. Her remarkable influence was finally acknowledged when she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in December 1992, a month before she passed away. Despite having mostly stopped performing, she did make a few noteworthy comebacks. In 1976, Robin and Marion partnered her with Sean Connery in a poignant retelling of the Robin Hood myth. She portrayed Lady Marion, a nun now, who reunites with an elderly Robin Hood. She added a calm depth to the job, which was her first significant one in 8 years. Steven Spielberg then hired her as an angel in Always in 1989. Help a Lost Soul. It was a short-lived yet profoundly symbolic role. Her ageless grace is the reason Spielberg particularly picked her. She made her last on-screen appearance before dedicating herself entirely to humanitarian activities. By the end of 1992, everything had changed. Hepburn had been suffering from significant stomach pain shortly after her return from Somalia. She had pseudomyxoma peritonia, a rare and severe cancer that had spread, according to tests. The prognosis was dire. Only months remained in her life. Her poise in the face of the news was impressive. According to reports, she muttered, "How disappointing," as she peered out the window. Her only wish was to spend Christmas back in Switzerland, but she was too frail to travel by plane. To transport her home, designer Hubert de Givenchy, a personal friend, organized a private jet loaded with flowers. In the company of her family, she passed away in Tolochinenez, Switzerland. She was accompanied by her close friends, her partner Robert Wolders, and her sons Sean and Luca. In her sleep, Audrey Hepburn died quietly on January 20, 1993. She was 63. Longtime friend Gregory Peck read Rabindranath Tagore's Unending Love at her death. UNICEF representatives, Roger Moore, and Hubert de Givenchy were present. Even though the world was in mourning, her legacy continued to grow. Through her movies, her humanitarian endeavors, and the lives she impacted, Audrey Hepburn will always be remembered. When Audrey Hepburn came in New York City in 1951, she was 22 years old. Almost nobody knew her name, despite the fact that she had secured a role in the Broadway play Gigi. Like every other young actress, she was hoping for a big break. In the same year, a straightforward task was handed to Life magazine's budding photographer, 29-year-old Milton H. Green. Present this new talent to the American people. Hepburn was photographed by Green in a way that had never been seen before as he followed her around Manhattan streets. She didn't yet have the flawless lighting and meticulously arranged hair of a Hollywood star. She was spontaneous, expressive, and vivacious. In a few of the images, she was practicing. She was photographed by others while they were quietly admiring the city. She had a quality that the world had not yet recognized, according to Green. His daughters acquired his photography library after his death in 1985. It remained unaltered for many years at their Tarrytown, New York, boyhood home. They discovered a collection of unlabeled negatives in 2012 while going through old boxes. When they held them up to a light box, they discovered something amazing. Missing pictures of Audrey Hepburn before she rose to fame. A few of the positions had never even been created. They recovered the photos and made them public with the assistance of photography specialist Terence Pepper. In publications and exhibitions, these long-forgotten images were suddenly brought to life, revealing Hepburn before Roman holiday altered her life in 1953. There was another secret treasure in a Brighton, England, basement. During the 1950s, photographer George Douglas worked for Picture Post and took pictures of Hepburn and other celebrities. In the 1970s, he retired, packed up his work, and left. His wife, Jill, discovered old lockers containing film negatives while cleaning their basement following his death in 2010. There were lost photos of Hepburn from 1952, when she was still a little known as an actor. She appeared carefree, fun, and totally unguarded in these pictures, in contrast to the glossy studio shots that Hollywood would eventually employ to mold her image. Even though the negatives had been scuffed and carelessly preserved over time, their allure could not be denied. Douglas's artwork was repaired and exhibited during the 2014 Brighton Festival. An aspect of Hepburn that had been concealed for decades was shown to the public. An auction was the surprising source of another forgotten image. Hepburn was taken by photographer Douglas Kirkland for How to Steal a Million in 1966 while wearing a complex Givenchy lace mask. The shot was intended to convey the sophisticated, light-hearted tone of the movie, but for some reason it was never utilized. The openness was lost in Kirkland's records. Many years later, in 2017, a collector of Audrey Hepburn memorabilia discovered a hazy set of transparencies at an auction. There was something significant about them. After having them developed, she discovered that she had discovered a long-forgotten portrait of Hepburn in one of her most famous poses. Hepburn's son, Luca Detti, and Kirkland's estate assisted in restoring the photograph to the public eye. The photo was made memorable by the beautiful lace mask that emphasized Hepburn's expressive eyes. As of right now, it is regarded as one of her best portraits. However, why were so many of these pictures kept secret for so long? During the 1950s and 1960s, Hollywood studios had complete control over a star's public persona. It was intended for Audrey Hepburn to be viewed as glamorous, sophisticated, and elegant. She didn't fit the image they sought to promote in any picture that depicted her as a typical young woman. The studios were concerned that the appearance of Audrey's perfection would be undermined if too many people saw her in real life. A great number of these pictures were either forgotten, put away, or neglected.